It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of A Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with Your Personal Bank. Now here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. And I'm going to tell you, I'm really excited about, we've got a bit of a format change, I guess I would say. Those of you that have been listening for a while know that, this started out as a financial show this past year, starting with the COVID restrictions, and since talked a lot about government actions and various things impacting our money and the economy and taxes and all those kinds of things. And I've kind of sprinkled the Your Personal Bank concept, how it works, how you can apply it, how it can impact your financial future, reduce taxes, give you more control of your money, give you access, create positive arbitrage, all those kind of things. I've also interspersed it with the bigger picture things, like I said, current events, political things, taxes, and whatever. And what we've kind of decided, we've gotten so much, I've gotten a tremendous amount of positive feedback from listeners, and I truly appreciate it. Again, if you want to contact me, my email is Ferenc at yourpersonalbank.com. It's F-E-R-E-N-C. There's no E. It's a Hungarian name, so it's actually pronounced Ferenc in Hungarian, or Ferenc, but no E in English. So it's Ferenc at yourpersonalbank.com is my email, and which is on our website, yourpersonalbank.com, which you can listen to any of the previously recorded shows. My point is this, kind of digressing here, is the idea is the second show of the week is to maybe take a step back a little bit, a bigger picture view of things, and focus. So the first show of the week, try to focus more on the financial aspects, more financial details, I guess, how your personal bank works and all those kinds of things. And the second show of the week, take a bigger view picture, how all these current events affect our money. And today, what I really want to talk about is, and I mentioned it briefly in the previous show, so if you missed it, again, go to yourpersonalbank.com. But the real focus today is, again, we're in the era of big government. There's no reasonable person, I think, that can argue that fact. Our government has now spent already an unprecedented amount of money, in other words, percentage-wise and total dollars-wise, or pretty much however you want to measure it. Our federal government has spent more money than any country has in the history of man. We are in uncharted waters. We're in uncertain territory. We don't know what's really going to happen, but we can project from previous experience, macroeconomics, things like that, what likely is going to happen. And again, I've talked about that in the last show quite a bit in terms of how to address that, how to navigate it, what should you do with your money, how should you look at starting to diversify, things like that. Again, go to the yourpersonalbank.com and listen to the previous show if you missed it. The thing is, the bigger picture here is, again, if you've heard, it's no secret, I'm a fiscal conservative. I have been a fiscal conservative for decades. Even I remember back as a teenager being frustrated. I guess I've just always been, maybe it was the way I was raised. I don't know. But I've always felt like, I can tell you, it comes from me growing up. When I was 7 years old, prior to that, we were upper middle class, lived in a nice house on an acre in a neighborhood, suburb of Kansas City. On a lake. We weren't right on the lake, but we were in a lake community. My dad was an acoustical engineer. You've heard the story. He escaped from Hungary, from the Soviets, immigrated eventually as a political refugee to the United States, did it all legally, became a U.S. citizen, went to college, all that stuff, met my mom. So I'm actually half Hungarian. I'm the oldest son, so I have my dad's name. That's where it comes from. And I was born here, of course. But when I was 7, my dad tragically was killed in an accident. Back then, it wasn't life insurance and things like that weren't nearly as common as they are today, or the amounts were. My mom, I was the oldest of 3 children. My mom was a school teacher, of course, stay-at-home mom at that point. we went immediately pretty much from upper middle class to, barely making it. In fact, we moved to a farm, literally raised most of our own food. I remember we had a half-acre garden. We had we had an orchard, apple orchard and peaches and all that kind of stuff. And we would go to town. We were about 45 minutes outside of Kansas City, typically about once a month to buy flour and sugar and the basics like that. And my mom went back to school, got her master's degree, and first became a substitute and then a regular school teacher. But again, back then, teachers weren't paid that much. They get paid much better today, regardless of what you hear politically. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We did what we had to do to survive. And money was scarce. And so wastefulness was not something in my family, in my growing up. And so I guess that's where it really comes from. Wasting food or wasting anything was just not done. It wasn't allowed. We didn't have the extra or the wherewithal to waste anything. So it was almost like it was a sin. You know what I'm saying? It was strongly discouraged. And I grew up with that. So when I see waste, when I see a federal government spending money, and I've stated it this way before, spending money like a drunken sailor, I find it abhorrent. I recoil. I get frustrated. I get angry. Some of my experience growing up comes back. And I just don't like wastefulness. So when I was in the military, I'll give you one other quick example. I saw wastefulness where the military was getting extra money for equipment and weapons and things like that. And the supply sergeant I was good friends with, and I saw a lot of wastefulness there where, $100 hammers and things like that. And it frustrated me then. So this past several decades, from a personal standpoint as a fiscal conservative, has been, extremely difficult. It's been frustrating. And I'm talking about either political party, whoever's been in charge. It's just been really, really frustrating. Of course, in the late 90s, we actually had a balanced budget for a period of time. And in fact, that was during it happened during the Clinton administration. I did not support him, but it happened in his administration. And to credit where credit's due, he inherited it. Let's be real. This is a basic economic financial literacy thing. Presidents and administrations and political parties often, take credit for things that they didn't really have much, if anything, to do with. But if they see the parade moving in a direction, they are good at getting in front of the parade and taking credit for it. Clinton inherited a tremendous economy. And it was so much so that it became, we had a balanced budget. And he got in front of it and claimed credit for it, as all politicians do. But to give him credit, he didn't spend so much more that it put us under either. So I was happy about that. I felt like, to me, a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution would be a great thing. Many states have it, and they managed to survive and just fine. So what we've seen happen this past year, particularly with COVID shutdowns, a government-caused crisis, in my opinion, and then a government solution that is, I don't know if it's all that great. Let's put it this way. He spent many times more than the economic impact, and it went to many places that had nothing to do with COVID. It's a dark day. I find it extremely frustrating. When I think about it sometimes, I wouldn't say I'm depressed, but I feel a level of depression, or it's depressing. How's that? And the most depressing part of it is really the lack of accountability, the lack of fiscal responsibility of our leaders, the lack of fiscal responsibility of those that voted for or encouraged our leaders or encouraged in any way, and those that think it's a good idea to get a check from the government. You know, the comment I've been sharing so many times in so many shows lately has been, the government has no money. It's not theirs. They are the stewards. What happened to good stewardship? And, as a person in the financial industry, I work with people and their money and things like that. And I often say to folks when I'm talking to individually and we're having this discussion, I'll say, look, if I was managing your money, for example, and I manage it 1/10 as badly as the federal government manages our money, you would fire me in a heartbeat. In fact, you'd probably sue me. I'd probably lose my license and never be in this business again. I might even be in jail. That's how badly our leaders, our elected officials, and our bureaucrats, the unelected ones, manage our money. And the fact that we allow it to happen ongoing, and we keep electing these same people that are just, like I said, spending money like a drunken sailor, and a lot of people thinking that's a good thing, is just absolutely mind-boggling to me. And what it does is it points out to me that there is a tremendous lack of financial literacy. And there's a tremendous lack of fiscal responsibility and stewardship. Who I feel the most sad for are the younger folks. Because basically what's happened, particularly this past year, is their inheritance, so to speak, has been spent. And guess who's going to pay the price for much of this rampant spending? And what's ironic about it also is many of them are the ones that voted and encouraged and support this. Yet they have no idea how much or how badly it's going to impact them over the rest of their lives. And the adults in the room have kind of just allowed it to happen. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm not trying to discourage anybody, but what I am saying is we are in a we're in a fiscal crisis. We have an immigration crisis on the border. We have a fiscal crisis in our country. And we either got to step up and start changing that and do something about it and stand up for it, or it'll be too late. Stay tuned in the next segment. I'm going to talk about some of the solutions because I'm not quite ready yet to give up on our country.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to Your Personal Bank Show. The last segment I was talking about is I'm not ready to give up on our country. And what I mean by that is, well, where else are you going to go? I mean, as frustrating as things might be even now, my dad escaped the Soviets, for example, from an oppressive, Soviet government, right? Taking over Hungary. Came here, immigrated legally, became a U.S. citizen. I was born here. So my family heritage is one of escaping oppressive government, overwhelming government, for freedom. Our country's history is based on freedom. We broke away from Britain because of an oppressive government, a monarchy. Soldiers have fought and died throughout our country's history, not for security, but for the concept of freedom. Even today, we have immigrants escaping, legal and otherwise, or leaving other countries to come here because we've been known forever as the land of opportunity. It's not the land of security, it's the land of opportunity. I'm hopeful that heritage, that history, is important to enough people that we're able to preserve that. See, a lot of the people we have in charge right now of our government, and I'm talking about elected and non-elected bureaucrats, have a different view or vision of what they want to see our country to be. They want a revolution. They want change. They want something to be totally different. Yet we still have people escaping other parts of the world to come here, not other places, but to come here because of the opportunities that this country provides or has provided. Now that can be lost. That can be lost. The founding fathers talked about this. That can be lost in a generation. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I thought it was really, it was high praise. I was very humbled by as a prospective new client that met with me regarding the personal bank concept. And they said, I want you to know, I've been listening to you for a while, and you've talked about a lot of the political, or really, I don't think these are political comments or thoughts. Some people would laugh. I understand that. No, what I think they are is just basic common sense. Sadly, common sense is never very common, but recently it seems like it's just like disappeared, particularly with a lot of our political leaders, again, elected and otherwise. But the common sense tells me that, we are a land of opportunity. We're a land of freedom. We're a land where you can do the things you want to do. Look, if you want to go other places and get security, I mean, my gosh, Europe has a lot of that. And I have people I know. I'm half Hungarian. I know folks there, and I've shared some of these stories about what it's like to live there. It's different, folks. I mean, most people over there pay roughly half their income to taxes to get the health care and all the benefit, the education and things that they get. Look, if that's what we want, we're willing to pay half of our income, basically. Okay, that's a way to go. But I'm hopeful that that's not the way our country decides to go. I would prefer to see it one where those that want to accomplish something can continue to do so. Sadly, it's becoming more difficult, and I'm not certain if it's too late or not yet. I'm hopeful it's not. I firmly believe that the majority still believe in freedom and opportunity. We'll see. These next election cycle, for example, I think the midterms will tell a big story. We'll have to navigate some things, certainly over this next couple of years, like higher taxes, as I talked about in the last show, some of the best ways to address that. Certainly, we're looking at the very strong likelihood of higher inflation as things go forward with all these extra money being printed. But what I was just starting to say, I got a high compliment in one of my probably new client said, I was listening. We were listening to your show, and I had my college-age daughter, and we were listening. And we've been listening several times, and we were having a discussion about the things you were talking about fiscal responsibility of our government and various things like that, and the impact that our government actions have on our money and things. And I took that's high praise to me, because what was happening was the father and daughter were discussing these things. It was opening the dialogue, people starting to think about it. See, change starts with ideas. And ideas can be powerful. And if we can get this idea of fiscal responsibility, expecting fiscal responsibility from our leaders, that could change everything. And, just the spark of an idea can be powerful. And I guess what I'm trying to say is freedom is one of the most powerful ideas that have ever existed throughout human history. There's many stories of freedom or the hope for freedom inspiring people. My hope is that the preservation of the freedoms we do have that are clearly under threat, many of them, will be enough for people to stand up and fight for those freedoms. See, this cancel culture stuff and all these things that are going on, and people, I talked about closet conservatives, I believe that the silent majority, now's not the time to be silent anymore. Look, they can't throw if everybody stands up, they can't fire everybody. They can't throw everybody in jail. They can't, and I'm not saying those things will happen to you. But my point is, if we're in the majority, we need to act like we're in the majority. And up to this point, I can't say that that's been the case. There are encouraging aspects. There's things I'm seeing where states are starting to step up and protect some of the rights of their citizens from an overreaching federal government. That's encouraging. And in fact, that is part of how our system is supposed to work. It's a system of checks and balances. The Founding Fathers set it up that way originally and intentionally and with a lot of wisdom, frankly. See, one of the knocks on the Founding Fathers is they weren't perfect people. Well, guess what? Neither are you, neither am I. No one's perfect. But their ideals were among the best we've ever seen. And it's the ideals of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the ideals. I could use an example, and I know this can be sometimes controversial, but the ideas of people like Ronald Reagan, like I just rewatched the video of Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. She was writing a paper on it, and I showed her. She's a freshman in high school, and she never heard of this speech. And I pulled up the video and showed it to her and let her watch it. And it was inspiring. She was inspired by that message. Of course, freedom won out, didn't it? The wall was torn down, and that was a wall that was built to keep people in, not keep people out. So my point is, an idea like freedom that came about in Eastern Europe to tear down the Berlin Wall can grow and germinate and become powerful and even overcome an oppressive government like communist Russia was at that time. So there's still hope. Stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And I guess what I'm sharing the message today is one of hope. You know, we have a tremendous lack of fiscal responsibility today, especially with our federal government. And this is going to affect our money. This is going to affect our lives. It's going to affect the ability for us to save money, or earn money, keep it, and pass it on to the next generation. There's steps that can be taken to help alleviate some of that. In fact, I discussed that in a previous show. I would encourage you to go to yourpersonalbank.com and check it out if you missed it. But today I want to focus on the bigger picture a little bit. Step back and how do these current events, how are these things going to affect us, and how do we navigate this? And I was sharing the story, like I said, it's kind of personal to me because it's in my family heritage, and that's communism taking over Eastern Europe, for example, after World War II, and the Berlin Wall and those kinds of things. Certainly that's a dramatic example, but it's an example of government getting out of control and taking charge of other people, of people's lives. And it took a while. But eventually, the people stood up and got fed up. And eventually, the wall came down. Now, my hope is we don't have to learn those lessons the hard way. In other words, I've talked to a lot of people, and I've gotten some messages too that are somewhat discouraging, and folks who are discouraged. Because they see us going, what I think one of the best analogies I've ever heard, and I think it's really good, is it feels like we're on the Titanic and we're going full speed ahead straight towards the iceberg. And some of us recognize that fact, and others are just dancing and, being oblivious. Yet some of us know the iceberg's coming, and we're trying to warn and wake up some folks and help them realize that all is not lost yet, but it will be if we keep on this path the way we're going. Look, folks, I'll give you a perfect example. We have taken on more debt as a country than any country in the history of man. Percentage-wise, numbers-wise, I don't really care how you measure it. More than any other civilization in the history of man. We're approaching $30 trillion of debt by the end of this year is what the estimates are. We've spent $6 trillion just in the past year, and our federal government is talking about spending more. When will the madness end? When will it be enough be enough? When are the majority? It doesn't have to be everyone. We don't have to convert or, I'm not even saying convert, that's a bad word. We don't have to educate or wake up and smell the coffee. Everyone. We just need a majority. And depending on what happened this last election, I know there's discussions and arguments about who really won. I get that. And there's questions about what happened, but there's also some encouraging things that are happening where states are tightening up election rules and things like that, which is very encouraging. Should have been done a long time ago. I mean, logically speaking, I don't understand how anyone can argue the fact that to vote, you should prove who you are, show an ID. You have to do that to get a library book. And I think we can all agree voting is probably more important than a library book, right? And when people say, well, it's whatever, racist or whatever that may be, and by the way, are you getting tired of that? When somebody wants to argue with you and they just start name calling or throw out the race card or something like that, that's like a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. And enough's enough. When the Peter cries wolf enough times, people stop listening. I see some of that happening. That's encouraging. We need just to stop reacting to that. When the 2-year-old throws a fit, sometimes you just got to put them in timeout. You know what I'm saying? And just ignore them because they're just throwing a temper tantrum. They don't have any logical reasoning. They're a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. And I was already saying, I got this compliment from this listener the other day, I was meeting with this couple, and the first thing he said to me, and I thought that was so awesome, he says, look, I've been listening to your show for a while, and I mentioned this earlier, they were listening, and him and his college-age daughter were started having a discussion about fiscal responsibility in the government, some of the things I was talking about, which I think is absolutely awesome. If I can spark a conversation with people, that's truly where it starts. But he said, you're talking about people react with emotions and you're a thinker. You think through things. And I said, yeah, you're right. I do. I know it's hard to argue logic with emotion emotion with logic. But that's what needs to happen. You've got to get people to start to think. And if you get them to think and start with simple questions, something simple, not some big complicated thing and not in an attacking way. But just a simple question to get somebody to spark a thought. And maybe down the road, that person might say, maybe there's something to this. Stay tuned in the last segment. We're going to talk about this further.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Okay, we're rounding third, and we're wrapping this up today. And like I said, what I'm discussing today really is about how the lack of fiscal responsibility of our federal government in particular will affect our dollars. What can we do about it? Well, the big picture thing is we have to start with the big ideas. What's important? Is fiscal responsibility an important concept? Is stewardship important? Does the government have any money, or where does the government get their money? By the way, when they say we're going to spend $1.9 trillion, where does that money come from? See, it's asking those questions, those thought-provoking questions, that'll get at least some people away from the emotions a little bit and start to use the thought process a bit. See, we're arguing emotions with logic. And that's extremely difficult to do, but it's a necessary thing to do. John Jay talked about, John Jay, by the way, if you don't know who he is, one of the founding fathers, was the first Supreme Court justice. He was there. And he talked a lot about freedom, and the values of the freedoms are only important if people understand they have the freedom and what they're for. So he called it civic literacy. See, we have for far too long, there's a movement in our country that wants, it's so obvious today, and I think a lot of us, including myself, it kind of surprised us. There's a movement in the country that wants to fundamentally change our country as it is. They want something dramatically different. I don't think there's any argument there. And many of them are right now in charge of many levers of our government, both elected and otherwise, bureaucratic-wise. They've taken over at the education fields, culture, Hollywood, obviously, a lot of different government, of course. And we've kind of allowed that to happen. We've been a bit asleep at the wheel. And I think part of that, and I'm saying that myself included, part of it is because we, as a hardworking American who's focused on, what do most people really want? This isn't hard, folks. This is what most people have wanted from the beginning of human history. We want to have a quiet, peaceful life, and we want to, do something for our loved ones. And we just want to be happy, right? Peaceful and happy is about, and we don't want people interfering with us. But unfortunately, there's a group out there that think differently. And they've gained a lot of ground. They've taken over a lot of areas. The media, my gosh, almost all the media are, just totally for all this kind of big government stuff, okay? And are willing to say and do just about anything to support the message. I think many of these areas are irredeemable. In other words, I don't think we can change maybe education or the media or whatever. We have to create alternatives, common sense alternatives, and start listening to those and stop listening to the ones that are just putting out, well, frankly, in many cases, just propaganda and a lot of lies. We need to stop being involved in the systems that have been put in place to propagate that hate America, big government, high taxes, America's bad, all those different things, the folks that want to change. They're called a lot of different things, socialists, leftists, whatever you want to call them. And unfortunately, they've taken over, for the most part, one of our political parties that happens to be in charge right now. One question I would ask is what happened to the moderate Democrats? Why is there, it seems like none of them left. Why is the leader of the Senate from New York and the leader of the House from San Francisco, two of the most left-leaning areas of our country? Why is that our leadership? Where's the representation from the middle somewhere? That would be that's an interesting question to find out. But we need to stop being or supporting. We need to be smarter about this. Look, I know some of this stuff may sound a little radical, but what's easier? Sending your kids and paying for a college that's going to indoctrinate them into a bunch of leftist ideas, or homeschooling them, or doing online school, or other alternative things that are going to actually teach them what they need to learn to be successful adults. See, why be a part of that? I've also talked about in earlier shows, when Google and Apple and Amazon and them shut down Parler because, let's face it, and Twitter basically colluded to shut down a competitor. Okay, because they didn't agree with their political beliefs, I decided I was going to stop supporting those companies. I have barely used Google ever since, only when absolutely necessary. By the way, folks, there's other search engines out there that don't hate you if you're a conservative, for example. I use SmartPage. They're out of the Netherlands, for example. But they don't go after free speech. They're not attacking free speech. Okay? And there's other alternatives to Google or Amazon. I've refused to buy anything from Amazon. Is it less convenient sometimes? Yes. But what's more important? And what's more inconvenient? where we're in a situation where you're paying a bunch more in taxes, or you have to work another 5 or 10 years because of the higher taxes or higher costs of goods and services, or you may be not able to retire, or stop supporting these things, stand up and have a voice, get involved. See, we've been asleep at the wheel as the silent majority. The silent majority needs to stop being silent. We're still the majority. I firmly believe that. But we need to step up and get involved and do what we can get involved with the school board, get involved with local politics, get involved, whatever it is, get involved. Let your voice be heard. Wherever you have an influence or impact, start doing that. Because it's either that or we let the vocal minority dictate the future of our country. And if they manage to successfully take over what they want to take over, this will be a very, very different country in the future than it is today. And your ability to live your life the way you do today will be significantly different. Your ability to make money, earn money, keep money, pass on money, for example, would be dramatically different. All right? Your lifestyle will probably change. These are serious, serious things. Let me give you another example. I talk to people like this all the time. The qualified plans, the IRAs, 401ks, and all those kinds of things, I call them government-sponsored plans. Who created those things? Well, Congress did. Who do they benefit in most cases? By the way, if you look at the numbers, should you pay the tax up front or pay it later? Most of the time when we analyze it and actually look at the numbers, most of the time it's better to pay it now and let it grow tax-free the rest of your life. And do it outside of a government qualified plan. Because, why? Can they change the rules for in the future? Do you trust Congress with your retirement, or how much of your retirement you're going to be able to actually use or keep, and how much you're going to have to send to them? Do taxes impact qualified accounts? There's no question about that it does, in a huge manner. Am I saying you shouldn't contribute to an IRA or 401k or deferred comp or whatever? No. What I'm saying is you should at least consider the risks involved and run the numbers of doing an alternative. That's one of the things I love about your personal bank. It has nothing to do with Congress or the federal government. It's a contract between you and an insurance company, a private contract. That's a significant difference. And you're not supporting or getting and being involved or part of the government-sponsored qualified plan program. Folks, here's the thing you need to understand. They can change the tax rates anytime they want to. They're discussing it as we speak. They're stating they're going to raise taxes. If your tax rates increase and then you retire and access funds from a qualified plan like an IRA or a 401k, you're going to have to pay whatever rates they deem you're going to pay in the future. Are those rates going to be higher or lower? No one knows. It's completely unknown. And the way the government's been spending money, do you think it's going to be higher or lower in the future? And I guess the bigger question is, truly, do you trust Congress with your retirement? See, these are questions that need to be asked. Look, if you do, that's fine. Or if you're willing to take that risk, okay. But at least ask the question. At least analyze the risks. Look, if you were to invest in an investment property like real estate, or you were going to buy a stock or something like that, or a precious metal, or any other asset. Let's face it, any asset. One of the key things you analyze is what's the risk? What's your risk tolerance? I almost never talk to somebody who has an IRA or 401k or has contributed one who's ever asked the question about what's the tax risk for my IRA or 401k in the future. How much is actually going to be mine? And in fact, if you haven't done that, there's a book I always recommend. It's called The Power of Zero by David McKnight. Read that book. Check it out. It will open your eyes in terms of what your potential tax risk is on any of those kinds of accounts. Look, we call them ticking tax time bombs. Do you want to create an alternative, a second bucket of money that's income tax free, that would give you options, it's liquid, have access to it, positive arbitrage, and I think, in my opinion, most importantly, has nothing to do with Congress? Then contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Folks, start taking control of your life again. Be selective who there's lots of ways to vote. I mean, of course, the vote, you go and vote. But, we can vote with our wallets, too. We can choose where to spend our money. I don't know about you, but if you're tired of Disney getting rid of firing people because of their political beliefs, then why are you on Disney Plus? Why are you supporting that? It's that kind of thing. We can vote with our wallets. And I'm not just saying just Disney. I'm using that as one example. There's so many examples out there. Be strategic. Be thoughtful about where you spend your money. If you're spending your money with a company that hates you for your beliefs, why are you spending money? Why are you forcing money? They don't want your money. They don't like you. They do not like you. They hate you. Why would you work with them? Now, look, if you agree with those beliefs, fine, support them. That's your right. That's at least at this point, we still have that freedom. And I guess the last thought I want to leave with this, and I find really concerning, is this bill H.R. 1 that's, I hope doesn't go through, but could lead easily to one-party rule. And folks, if you know your history at all, do you know of any country that's had any government system that's basically dominated one-party rule that's been good for the citizens? Great examples are Russia, China, Cuba, North Korea. What about California or New York or Detroit? Do you want to live in those kind of places? That's what one-party rule looks like, folks. Okay? Especially when you're talking about big government and big dominating and overwhelming government. Look at the facts. This is what you want. And if you don't, stand up for it. Stand up for your rights while you still have them. And as long as it's still on their money, I'm going to just say this. In God, we trust.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.